Do I need a motion for that?
No.
No.
I don't know, actually.
Okay, I'll put a motion that we reconvene the open. Thanks, Councillor Pasalt. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Okay, we're now back in the open. And we're up to we've got deputations.
I think you guys have got more faith in the tribunal than I do. That's my concern.
It's not the tribunal though. It's the Supreme. It's the Supreme Court.
Thanks everyone for your patience. We're now up to item 3, which is 3 Gregson Avenue, and we'll hear the deputations.
A lot of the time.
First deputation is Representative Joanna. Here, thank you.
Kathy, she's got some handouts.
I'll pass them around for you. No, not at all. You're right. Just take a seat at the table there. Sure.
If you can speak loudly into the microphone so we can all hear, please.
Yeah, sure.
When you're ready.
Thank you, committee members, for the opportunity to present this evening. My name's Jo and I'm a resident close by to the proposed site. I've been a resident for 20 years and use the green space and bushland daily, walking to and from our local school and for activities for our child. I acknowledge there is a need for this type of specialised acute facility. However, I feel the proposed location is not suitable and will highlight a few of my concerns together with the some inaccuracies within the plans. Referring to the interim planning scheme 3.0.6 natural environment. The site is an active piece of land functioning as part of open public space, not a vacant block as described by the planning application. Retaining this land in its natural state is vital in an ever reduction of green spaces around Hobart and is the only green space with adjoining bushland in Newtown. Housing native flora and fauna, this setting provides an opportunity for hands-on environmental education to both Newtown Primary and Hobart High School. 10.6.3, ways and open public open space. The site links Gregson Avenue to Valentine Street, exiting opposite Newtown Primary. Photo 1 illustrates the well-worn path. The level access provides a safe pedestrian corridor for all ages for activities such as bike riding, dog walking, and provides students and families a way to commute to work and school away from the busy Forster Street. The footprint of the site would completely block this access. Keeping this area as a reserve would sit within the Hobart Interim Planning Scheme's Objective 2, maintain and enhance the natural environment values within Hobart. In fact, we'd like to see this space develop further as South Hobart is a lovely linking way. Another concern is when did this land transfer over from Hobart City Council to Homes Tasmania? There has been no communication or consultation about this, and I've also not received any information regarding this specific development plan, even though I'm a few houses away. Natural springs. The plans do not address the various natural springs located just above the site. These darker areas are spotted across the site, shown in photos 2 and 3. The ground is wet underfoot, even in the summer months. Photo 4 and the video, I don't know if that's been able to be played. I'll just keep going. Taken by a Gregson Avenue resident, shows one of the springs running after heavy flooding down to the site. Thank you. Zone Purpose Statement 10.1.1.5 to provide a high standard of residential amenity. 3 Gregson Avenue and surrounding properties are purely residential houses and open spaces. It is a quiet, peaceful community with a mix of young families, retirees, professional couples and older people. Newtown Primary sits just 100 metres away from the proposed site. The development of the facility will totally change the high standard of residential amenity, with its occupants displaying, as quoted, violent and destructive behaviours. It will create a negative impact on the amenity of Gregson Avenue with the loss of safety and the feel of security of its residents. The plans state to attempt to retain a discreet presence to avoid unwanted people identifying it and trying to access the building, and this I find is concerning. This is a known risk to residents and surely should be taken into consideration. The proposed plan is misleading in its advertising as a communal residence. The plans state that the occupants would live separately with no shared parts of the building, including independent outdoor spaces that provide secure separation from each residence. Flushing engineers also refer to the plans as a multi-dwelling, not a communal residence. There'd also be considerable disruption to the residents at 34B Forster Street to access the infrastructure. In conclusion, the plans that you're being asked to approve do not accurately reflect the built reality of the development, and they do not reflect what will be the lived reality for our neighbours and life in our street. With the St John's Park Health and Wellbeing Precinct Master Plan now complete, why is this specialised facility not considered for inclusion in this plan? It offers a great opportunity to build on a more accessible, appealing site, creating less disruption, lowering costs, as if this goes ahead, it will be a gross misuse of money, in my opinion, and also retain green space for the community and maintain our feeling of safety and security in our street.
You have 30 seconds left if you could wrap up, please.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, you're done. Okay, good timing. Any questions for Ms Hanowitz? Deputy, then Alderman, Councillor Dutta, others? And Councillor Lohberger.
Through you, Chair. Thanks for your deputation. Just how long has this been a walkway or, you know, like public open space?
I've talked to a few residents in the street who have lived there for over 40 years, and they were prepared to sign a statutory declaration that it has been for their entire time that they've lived there.
And you mentioned that it was possibly in Hobart City Council land use, like ownership, but it's the housing department now.
That's right. That's what I believe. That it was a part many years ago. It was part of that green space, but it's obviously been changed over. And I would have thought that.
Okay, and I went to do a site visit, and that's the only piece of flat land, isn't it, in that area?
That's right. We have looked at other ways to get to school, but it would mean going up a very steep hill, and losing that lovely flat area that it's used every day.
So, I mean, it's not traversable otherwise.
Oh no, I wouldn't be doing that
very
because it's so wet as well.
Quite steep. The houses, like in that figure 3 on the first photos.
Mm-hmm.
So the houses which are the front Forster Street.
The figure 3 on the first page, that would be in Gregson Avenue on the first page.
And so on the other side of that fence, there's Maypole, the Maypole rivulet.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. And lastly, Chair, if I may, just in relation to any sort of sewerage connection, what's your understanding as to where that might go?
I believe that it runs along very close to the creek. That ours actually feeds into that creek, and we're above.
Right.
So, and I imagine you'd have to dig underneath the rivulet to get to it.
Just one last question. So there's not been any discussion with Homes Tax?
No. I'm 2 houses away from the site.
Thank you.
Councillor Dutta.
Thank you. The question had been asked already. Thank you.
And Councillor Lohberger.
One of mine has been asked, but I do have one more. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thanks, Joe, for coming in. Look, I understand you guys got quite a short notice of this meeting. Can you let us know when you were actually told that this item was listed?
Monday. So we would have loved to have been able to do a little bit more research, perhaps engage a planner, but unfortunately I work full time and I have a child, so it was really working as, you know, economically as I could to get a good representation together, so that was disappointing.
Do you know of any other potential representatives who are unable to come tonight because of the short notice?
Yes, I know of one person who would have been able to do a little bit of a reorganisation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask just one question? Just Valentine Street, I don't think I've been up there. Where does that lead to?
It goes up towards the back of St John's Park, and then it also adjoins to Hobart High School.
Okay.
And
So it's a dead end.
And Newtown Primary. That's right.
It's a dead end at Hobart High. Okay. So is it used much? Is it
Every other Valentine Street, do you
that
mean?
end of Valentine Street? Do people drop off?
Children, yes, school children walk up, and that's access to staff for going to Hobart High, and I'm assuming the other buildings at St John Park.
And is there a footpath up there, or is it just?
Yep, there's a footpath, yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, if you'd like to take your seat again, and I'll ask Grace Mulholland to come forward. You have 5 minutes, and you'll get a warning at 30 seconds to go.
Thank you. Thank you, Aldermen and councillors, for this opportunity. I first of all wish to state that I completely understand the ongoing need for a facility such as this. However, the number of representations submitted to Council gives a strong indication of the community feeling against where this facility is proposed to be situated. On the City of Hobart's website planning page under Do Your Research First is the advice talk to your neighbours. I wish to state that communication and consultation with the developer Communities Tasmania has been minimal and inadequate. The only correspondence the neighbourhood received was in May 2022, stating that Communities Tasmania will be developing its property at 3 Gregson Avenue for use as supported accommodation for young people living with disability. On December the 6th of the 7th, 2022, I received documentation from Homes Tasmania requesting access to my backyard to allow digging up and replacement of the existing sewer line. Included in the notice was a fail to respond clause of 21 days, meaning if I did not respond in that time, it would be taken that I had agreed to this work. I requested Communities Tasmania visit my property. Some discussion with 2 representatives of Homes Tasmania took place, re the scale of the work required, after which I declined their proposal to excavate my backyard, including going underneath Maple Creek. Between then and now, the proposed facility has changed to a secure, special intensive support unit for clients with mental illness. Why has that change occurred? Addressing the interim planning scheme, general residential zone purpose statements 10.1.14 and 10.1.15, which state to encourage residential development that respects the neighbourhood character, to provide a high standard of residential amenity. In the application, mention is made of the behavioural nature of the client sector the facility is proposed for, means that escalation in some form of violence and destruction of their immediate environment will be an ongoing issue. There is a greater likelihood of this during the night time, as this is when clients tend to experience stronger psychotic symptoms. The noise and disruption from these incidents will impact on the neighbouring properties, resulting in an unreasonable loss of amenity, namely through excessive noise and increased traffic movement during the nighttime hours. With security lighting, CCTV, high walls and fences, this in no way would be a discrete development sitting in our quiet suburban no-through street. There is, however, a nearby alternative option, the block beside Gregson, 9 Gregson, which actually was up for sale in 2005 with Edward Windsor. The development could sit at the top of the hill, abutting St John's Park, with good vehicle access to and from St John's. It would be separate to but close to the proposed health and wellbeing centre planned for there, allowing for more timely crisis intervention when required. There is a sewer line running through the lower corner of this block with sufficient fall. With regard to inland and watercourse flooding, the science of flood modelling is fairly recent, and from Maple Creek there is little historical data to start with. At this point in time, with accelerated climate change, it is difficult to make reliable predictions. An example of this is the recent flood damage caused by Storm Babette in the Scottish town of Brecon. The town's flood defences were completed in 2016 and designed to protect the town from floods up to a 1 in a 200-year event. They have been toppled in less than 10 years. The consensus is that the climate is changing and there will be more extreme rainfall events. I'd like to add that solar access is good for mental health in clients and carers. Warmth and sunshine can help reduce distress and relieve pain. For months of each year, this block does not have that, as it sits in a hollow at the base of a native tree-covered hill. Some of the trees are on the significant tree register and provide habitat for currawongs, butcherbirds, wattlebirds and paddymelons. I don't agree with this proposal as it stands.
30 seconds, please.
The site at the top of the hill would be less costly to develop, have reduced ongoing running costs, and with sensitive design would really be discreet within the neighbourhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you. Thank you for coming in, Grace. I just wanted to ask a question about the siting of the facility, which you've mentioned quite a bit. If the facility was moved a bit further up into the St John's Park site, would that alleviate your concerns?
I have actually canvassed a number of neighbours who have put in representations, and they have all agreed that that would be a very suitable, satisfactory solution to this. I mean, everybody agrees that this is a worthy development. Everybody knows that they have to go somewhere. We need more land. And this site is flat at the top of the hill. It's got good solar access, and it has good access to a sewer line, either in St John's or at the bottom of Gregson, which would alleviate a lot of the development costs of digging up the whole reserve to dig under the creek, and no one knows exactly how that's going to work out.
Thank you for your answer.
Any further questions? Deputy, any other questions after Deputy?
Had a clarification about that.
Deputy and then the Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your deputation through you, Chair. I think you might have mentioned it, but why do you think this block hasn't been built on before?
Well, I think it's a very poor quality block. It sits at the base of a hill. It's got drainage issues because of the stream that we've seen, and it's got very poor solar access, and actually accessing a sewer line means digging under Maple Creek, actually underneath, and getting enough fall from there to the sewer line, which seems quite an engineering feat.
Lord Mayor.
Clarify the blocks you're talking about are on this diagram.
Yeah.
So the top block is the one you're talking about?
My understanding is that these blocks, the whole of that was one block, and I actually got information from Crown Land in about 2005 that the Crown Services were going to move that land, all of it, to Transend, and Hobart City Council had an interest. Somewhere along the line, some parts of it have been divvied up, so my understanding is that 3 is the block where the building would be, the big square, yeah, and 5 is everything else, through the trees, the easements, all the way along the top of St John's Park.
Okay. And do you know who that's owned by?
That's a Hobart Council City Reserve, as far as
Little block you're talking about there.
no, it's all part of the one thing.
I see.
So I think in 2005, when I've got a picture actually of the Edward Windsor sign, which is in the bottom corner next to the 9 Gregson, the first house going up the hill. The for sale sign was there, and my understanding that it was the whole thing that was for sale at that point. So it's been divvied up and changed hands over 10, 15 years.
Okay. And isn't that little block that you identify there where the spring is that we saw the photo?
No, the spring is down towards the bottom of the
I
hill.
see. Okay.
And the level land is right abutting all the fence line at St John's Park.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Any further questions? If not, then thank you very much for your deputation. And I'll invite the applicant to come forward. Shane Mann, Anna Bomforth and Thomas Chandler, please, from Homes, Tasmania. You all have 5 minutes, so you might want to divvy it up somehow, and then we can have questions at the end, and I'll give you a warning at 30 seconds. Thank you.
Okay, Shane Mann speaking. I just want to give a brief overview of the project and hand on to Homes Tasmania representatives to provide further detail. The proposed development on the current vacant site is for construction of a communal residence to house 2 supported clients by Homes Tasmania, which includes accommodation for support carers on a 24/7 basis. The residence has been designed to meet a very specific design brief that addresses the functional and operational needs to support the 2 residents. The residence provides 2 one-bedroom units which are interconnected through a common utility area. It also houses the support carers and a common kitchen, all under the one roof. The overall street presence is a single residential house. A lower ground floor is incorporated into the development, which houses storage rooms and access to clotheslines in the dining court.
Sorry to interrupt, but it might be more beneficial for the committee for you to address some of the concerns of the neighbours. I think we've all read the report and we understand the building structure, so it might be better to see if you can address some of the concerns of the neighbours.
Okay. Well, basically the title property owned by Homes Tasmania, state government, has been identified as a site for this development. Excuse me. And I think to answer some of the questions about access through the site, it doesn't matter what development would ever take place there. It's going to adjust the means of transgressing through the reserve. So therefore, it could be a traditional house, for example, because it's own general residential. That could be fenced, so it's going to affect access through there. We're not trying to block any access through the reserve. Just means that the pathway may be slightly higher up Gregson Avenue. As far as noise is concerned, the construction then means that the construction of the house or residence has been designed to minimise any acoustic leakage, so to speak. And I think the residents will be generally housed inside. There's 2 private courtyards which are screened, which provide privacy for both the residents and for the adjacent neighbours. And in addressing that, the site will be landscaped as well. There were 3 issues of minor concern that in the planner's report that required performance criteria. Those were, in our opinion, fairly minor and have been addressed with council engineers who have supported the application. And I think the issue raised about potential springs and floodwaters has been dealt with by the hydraulics engineer who prepared the flood hazard report, and obviously during the detailed documentation phase that would be considered further to avoid any issues there. I'd like to hand the rest of the presentation over to Homes Tasmania.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mann. Yep.
Anna Barmforth, Acting Director of Community Infrastructure, Homes Tasmania. Just to reinforce that we build homes for the most vulnerable people in our community, and that is no different in this instance. To the point that was raised around being in the community, through a pre-allocation process, we've identified demand for young people who already live in the neighbourhood and the community and are attending the schools. It was one of the driving factors behind choice of this type of site, because we're in the fortunate position of understanding who the people are that need these services in our community. So that definitely played to the decision to choose this block to build on. Also, these sites and this program has a 24/7 support model, so there is someone on site 24/7 looking after the needs of these young people, and they are all NDIS clients as well, so they have behavioural needs plans which are met by the support providers which are there on site. And we also have the opportunity for surrounding residents, once the buildings have been built and the support provider is in place, to engage with them and have that as a point of liaison and contact. And also just to reinforce what Shane said, that the site is owned by Homes Tasmania and zoned general residential, and it is a dwelling on there. In fact, it's the home for these young people.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the committee? Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Chair. Just through you, probably Anna, you're probably the person I'd need to ask these questions of. Is this proposal part of the state government's plan to transform St John's Park as part of that 30-year Royal Hobart Hospital extension?
No, it's a supported intensive, a special intensive support unit program. It's working with the new requirements of the NDIS, finding suitable properties for people living with disability to live well in a community and be able to thrive. So it's very important that they're place-based, integrated into the community, and that they have dwellings that meet their needs, built so they can thrive.
I think just on that, this is part of a statewide program that we're running. So we've already built 2 of these homes in the north of the state, and we've got another 2, this one and another one, which we're trying to bring forward in the south of the state.
I've just got a couple of questions. Sorry, Chair. Was there ever any consideration given to possibly siting it sort of up the hill a little bit further, so it's away from the residential zone, so it's not right in the residential zone?
Well, it is a residential dwelling, so the general residential zone is the perfect place to have a residential home for young people near the schools that they attend, and we own the land, so it was a perfect site to be able to do that.
Probably a question for Mr Mann. The lower ground floor is unoccupied, is that correct?
That's correct.
And is that due to flooding or inundation risk?
This class is non-habitable space. It's basically just storerooms. So it provides additional area that can be used to house the residents' possessions and general storage items, but it's a non-habitable space, and that's been clarified by council and also by a building surveyor.
So just the second part of that was just, is that floor non-habitable by design because of flood or inundation risk?
But by design, but also clarified by the flood mitigation.
Thank you. And final question, just with the landscaping of the site, will that improve the screening of this property from the neighbours? The final landscaping that takes place?
The whole property will be fenced, and there'll be substantial new landscaping to provide softening of the visual impact from the street.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, is there anyone else after Councillor Dutta? Councillor Ryan, and then the Lord Mayor.
Thank you for your presentation. Just one question with regards to a consultation. Did you have any consultation with the community?
So October 2021, so that was a point of clarification from before, that was when the land was transferred from Hobart City Council to Homes Tasmania, or then Department of Communities Tasmania. I believe it may have been under the city deal, but I'll have to check that as well. There was an initial DA submitted in January 2022, but that's where we'd worked through some of the stormwater issues with that site there. In May 22, a fact sheet was provided to neighbours outlining details of the development. In June 22, a letter was then provided to neighbours regarding Homes Tasmania's intent to develop the site. As Ms Mulholland said before, Homes Tasmania representatives have also met with a number of the surrounding landowners to talk through some of the access and issues that she raised there. And then the new DA was lodged in June 2023.
Just a follow-up question, Chair.
Go ahead.
So did you have a public meeting where the community members came to this meeting?
No.
Oh, okay.
Maybe just to elaborate on that, we didn't have a public meeting because this is a communal residence, so it's not a, as we said before, it's not a facility. So normally with larger facility developments, we'd go down that pathway of having open public forums for that consultation, but because this is more of a residential use.
And it's also important to respect the privacy of the tenants that are going to be in there and their support workers as well. So.
Then the Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Two themes to my questions. So this is like there's clear desire line marking, so in terms of the track that is formed in this area. And while I understand that's not generally considered part of a planning committee's assessment, was there any efforts made to recognise as a government agency that this was an important thoroughfare for the community and to design around allowing continued access on that desire line?
I can speak to that. Yes, we did discuss that with council. We met with one of the previous council officers in the open space planning team when we're looking at utilising the reserve for the sewer connection. And in that conversation we had, we did talk about the informal access and whether any contribution from us was wanted to formalise a bypass or a new path for that access. But then that conversation didn't go any further. So it was really a matter for council, not really for us, but we were happy to negotiate around that.
Right. Thank you, that's helpful. And the second question is around, obviously I'm not remotely qualified in this area, but I do recognise that Maypole Rivulet is a flood-prone area, and the issue of the sewer line being run underneath the rivulet, is that correct?
So
and how do you propose managing not disrupting, subterranean water flows and things like that, water table?
So the scheme, the concept for the sewer connection is that the new sewer line will run parallel to the council's existing stormwater or flood bypass, which runs along essentially the informal walkway between is it Valentine Street and Gregson Avenue. So we'll be building on the higher side of sewer line will be on the high side of that, and then duck under the existing stormwater bypass through under the rivulet into the back of one of our other properties at 32B Foster Street.
And you're happy, and as I said, I'm not qualified, but you're confident on not disrupting the water table and subterranean water flows?
Yeah, based on the advice that we've had from our engineers, consultants, and the hydrology assessment that we've had done, the flood report.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I'm just trying to get clarity. So you're proposing that you would build completely over the walkway? There wouldn't be a right-of-way through there at all?
No, there'll be. There's a flat portion of site of land on the higher side of our boundary, which could still be used as an informal access. But as I said before, that would be a matter for council as to whether that was formalised in any way but from what I can see on site and from where our boundary lies, that informal access could still be maintained.
But not this, you're basically going to build on this walkway that's currently there?
No, that's a bit further down the site. Our site, there's a gravel section above, which is essentially where the council stormwater infrastructure runs now, but by the time it gets to our site, there's kind of not really any informal track.
Deputy.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, just in relation to the sewage works, look like so they'll be going through another Homes Tas property. Obviously, that person or whoever lives there would know know about that, I'm assuming. Is that a costly way of looking at sewage connections?
I guess through all the exploration of all the options that we've undertaken through the design process, it's really the only option that we can find for viably
Right, so it just really depends on the site that you have is that's the only option.
Yeah, well, I guess the issue lies in the fact that Ms Mulholland mentioned it before, with the way that the sewer line main runs, it's actually on the wrong side of the creek essentially. So it was always going to be a difficult task for us to establish a sewer connection on that line. So we determined that, and in light of trying to minimise impacts on the neighbouring properties, that we could impact one of our own properties essentially and connect in through that.
I don't live there. And obviously the sewage connections are on that side because that's where the bulk of the residential properties are along Forster Avenue. Yeah. So, and presumably you're getting to the point where there are difficult pieces of land that you're looking at building on. And I understand that, but I'm just curious again to go to the point that the Lord Mayor raised, just in relation to, so that there will be space and there will be capacity to have as part of a condition that there will be that connection.
Well, not on our property as such, so I'm not really sure how council could stipulate a condition to provide access on land that's not ours. So,
and perhaps a question to you, Mr. Mann. So, for the footprint of the building, does it take up most of that flat space on 3 Gregson?
Well, the site has it's not really flat at all. There's a gentle slope across the whole site with a bit of does level out down towards the back of the adjacent property. So we've tried to keep it as high as possible within that site, not only to address potential flood mitigation, but also there's Tas water requirements to keep and council requirements to keep clear of the existing stormwater main that runs through there. So basically it has limited the potential to build on the site with those constraints.
Yeah, and then so that existing property or the land on 5 is much steeper next to this.
Then it does. The land does get steeper, but as Tom was saying, there is potential. I don't know how council will do it, but to formalise a track on the top side of our boundary.
Thank you.
Yes, okay, Councillor Ryan, then...
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Purcell,
right.
and then the Lord Mayor again.
Ryan's fine. Look, again, just going to the access through the site, which is the key thing that I'm interested in, mobility chair for the portfolio, and this has actually been identified by council in a current piece of work as a key linking site that we want to formalise as a council. So it's a really important thing for us and for the community per the representations. Over the stormwater easement, you're obviously not constructing anywhere, that's along the fence line. Is there any capacity for you to move your fence line boundary to accommodate a 1.5 metre wide, 2 metre wide footpath over that easement? It doesn't have to be paved, but to just shift your fence across and allow public access through that desire line as it currently stands, which is only over an easement anyway? Because I do believe that would appease some of the concerns that the residents have about the loss of their neighbourhood.
I suppose there is potential there. I don't know the legalities of finding that right away through that, but like in theory, that could potentially happen because the lower portion of the site is just landscaped land because of the existing services that run through there.
I guess my question, so I'll ask the council staff afterwards in terms of the legalities and how we could sort something like that out, an arrangement like that, and if it is indeed possible. But as the proponents, is this something that you would accept if there was a legal way to achieve a right-of-way through there?
Knowing some of the legal implications around the title and reversion clauses and those kind of things that come into play with council ownership and then the Crown, I think it would be difficult to achieve, but that's not to say that we wouldn't be, would be willing to work with council on...
Be willing to try?
Yeah, maintaining some kind of access. But again, I think that you could definitely achieve that on the higher side of the site.
Yeah.
Without too much trouble on council land. So, and whether we talk about contributing to that in some kind of way.
Okay,
Thank
thank you very much.
Lord Mayor.
I think it is probably just following on from that. I guess...
We might make this the last
Yeah,
question as well,
sure.
then we'll open the item.
I guess it would be if we asked to defer this for the work to basically to redesign this, contribute to the community, a piece of land so that this link can continue, and you move your fence back and resubmit. How would you feel about that?
I was going to say any delay is also a delay to someone getting a home, and these are very high needs, vulnerable people in the community.
Yeah.
You know, and this is a perfect place for them.
I understand that, but it's just that, yeah, I guess that it sounds as though you were going down that path with our open space staff, and then maybe because they left or you didn't get a response, we didn't do that work.
Council could have a look at the, as Tom was saying, the option that is on the land that you already do own.
But we owned this a few years ago, and we probably should have done this work.
Yeah, not now.
Yeah.
I think that's...
I know, but we probably should have done the work a while ago, but...
Yes. I think what I was saying before is there's definitely the capacity on the higher side of our site, or the boundary of our site, bounding between, you know, our site and the Hobart City Reserve, to actually have that walkway. And we'd be happy to contribute to the costs of that, but I think there will be issues around an access through our property.
Okay, thanks everyone. I'm going to open the item for debate. Who'd like to commence? Anyone? Oh, dead heat then. I'll go with the Deputy Lord Mayor and then Councillor Passault.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I think there's a number of issues that really don't sit comfortably with me in relation to this. I mean, this is an area that hasn't been built on, and for probably good reason. It loses that solar penetration. It's been seen by the community as a reserve for quite some time, and obviously being used for a number of times. So I mean, I've just I mean, I have concerns about it, and I'll speak some more about it here after hearing some of the discussion.
Okay, Councillor Passault, Deputy Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to the Director, to the point of negotiating with the applicants to maintain right-of-way over the stormwater easement as it exists, which is the desire line. Are there mechanisms by which we can achieve that or condition that into tonight's decision?
Through you, Chair, there's no planning basis for a condition of that nature.
In good faith, is there an arrangement that we can put to the applicants to work with them for that? obviously we can't condition stuff, but this is a state applicant on public land at a council. Is there a way that we can come to an agreement and work together to get the best outcome?
Through you, Chair, we're really in the hands of the applicant on that front. They are entitled to have the application that they've made to the council determined, and I do appreciate the comments about the land being historically owned by the council, but it's currently owned by Homes Tasmania. There are no public rights over that land, and they are entitled to have their application determined.
Lord Mayor.
I'm just remembering back to when we transferred the ownership of some of these blocks at Gregson Avenue. Can you tell me about, we did 3 and 5, that was it, wasn't it? Was that the...
Through you, Chair,
been around?
I did ask for a body of work to be done about that, and the answer was that we hadn't owned it. So for whatever reason, the person doing that research didn't appreciate the background to it. I mean, the reality is we are where we are today, and that the land is owned by Homes.
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm just trying to, because I think I remember when this happened, so I think it was only 2021. So you're saying we don't have any files of the...
Through you, Chair, I suspect the person that was reviewing the situation wasn't aware of the matters referred to by Ms Barnforth. I'm not sure, but the answer was we didn't ever own it. So clearly that's advice that's not correct. So I'm not able to assist the committee any further tonight. I can take those questions on notice, but as I said, the land is currently owned by Homes Tasmania now, and that's the basis of the application. Okay,
I would like to know about some of that transfer, because I'm kind of astonished that we would transfer land for homes, which we should certainly have done, without thinking about the strategic value of keeping that that sort of right of way through over a stormwater and through a public reserve. And I'm just surprised. I'd like to know.
So what do you suggest? We haven't got that information at the moment. I do have a recollection of it, but I don't think I'm accurate with it though.
Maybe it was another part of Gregson Avenue.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was right up.
It was a trade-off, I think.
The cul-de-sac.
Anyway,
okay.
Alderman Dutta.
Thank you. Now, taking into consideration that there is a bit of information that is required or needed, with regards to the question that the Lord Mayor asked.
I think that's relevant to the decision tonight, though.
Yeah, no, I understand that. But what I'm saying is that because of that clarity, that would help us in the decision making, even though it's not a planning matter, and there is time there until 30th of November, could this be deferred to get a bit more information, that's all? Not on the planning matter, but to clarify that particular aspect.
Well, that's possible. That's up to someone to put a deferral motion and also to see if we've got the relevant time to do it.
Through you, Chair, the application expiry date would allow for that, but I strongly urge the committee not to do so because that information is not relevant to the decision that you're being asked to make.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Dutta?
Yeah. Okay, so let me just ask another question then. A statement was made by one of the representatives that the zone purpose statement, and the question for me is this: can the zone purpose statement be used when assessing planning development or development application? Sorry.
Through you, Chair, not in these circumstances. There are some circumstances where they are relevant and they must be considered, but not in this situation.
Thank you.
Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation for approval, but I would like to put an advice clause in, which I believe would be appropriate, Ms Abey, for the council to work with the proponent to try to find a way forward with the right-of-way over the stormwater easement. It's on the advice clause. Is there any issues with the inclusion of that?
Through you, Chair, it might be appropriate for me to take that on notice as the director responsible for parks, rather than include it in the planning permit.
Sure. Okay, as long as there's formal advice there, then I'm happy to move. The reason why I'm happy to move the recommendation is that I do recognise the proponents' urgency for their clients, and it is a very real consideration for all of us in the community that vulnerable people need housing and they have to be housed somewhere. And I guess at first thought for me was, why wouldn't you build this as part of the health and wellbeing precinct? To which I would say, why wouldn't the state government do an actual master plan for the whole of St John's Park? But they'd seem disinterested in doing that. And in reality, it is somebody's home, and institutionalising people into an area like St John's Park rather than in a residential zone is not actually conducive to good outcomes for those people. That's the healthcare lens, and I appreciate the considerations and concerns for residents nearby. I do want to point out to the committee tonight that the Northern Suburbs Local Area Mobility Plan identified this specific route as a priority as part of our LAMPS project. We're yet to see the final copy of that, but it is in the draft. If you do a search on the hub for LAMP, you'll find that this is noted. So for me, the key thing, these cut-throughs and informal pathways which residents use all through Hobart are actually a Hobartism. It's actually one of the, I think we have a little in-joke about a vibe, and it's part of the Hobart vibe is being able to find these little laneways. They're all through Mount Stewart, all through Sandy Bay, and this is one of those places where, by my estimations, it's really important that this one is retained. So I'll move the officer's recommendation. I implore you guys to please try and come back to us for the benefit of the community and work to move your fence line across. I know I can't condition that in, but for the best outcome for everyone, including potentially people that are going to work in this complex, to have a conversation with us and with our director as relevant. But aside from that, I can't see any way that I can knock this proposal back. And I have, again, taken on board the residents' concerns and read all of your emails. We're obviously limited by the constraints of the planning scheme, but I do want to see that right-of-way retained. Thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
so we have a recommendation for approval. Any last comments before we put the recommendation? Deputy?
Yeah, I'm still, I still have concerns that I don't think are allayed with potentially having some discussion after we provide approval for this. And I know that we should have some goodwill from Homes Tas, but I think, what I see here is some continued use over many years as a reserve right next to bushland, which is just unfortunately really come up as another purpose. And I know it's residential, but I still have concerns about it. I don't think a delay to get more information that the Lord Mayor requires and to see if we can have that pathway is necessarily contrary. And I'll again ask Ms Abbey, is that, like, finding more information is not unusual for reasons for deferral, is it?
Through you, Chair, where the information that's being sought is wholly irrelevant to the decision that is being made, I can't support that. Ultimately, it's your decision, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is important for me to make my decision, to be honest. So I suggest that we test for deferral to the next meeting in relation to those points of information.
So are you moving a deferral motion?
So when is the cut-off again?
30th. It's 4 weeks.
Okay. So deferral for information, but for negotiation with Homes Tasmania to basically make a developer contribution towards retaining the pathway. Is that the point of the... Because otherwise the deferral, there's no point. Obviously they want to get on with the project, but...
I know, but we're talking 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking 2 weeks, and I would be much happier to have that information before us.
Sorry, I'm a bit confused because the Lord Mayor's question was around ownership of the land and how it transferred from Hobart.
Yeah, and that's the other piece of information. So 2 pieces of information.
That first bit is not relevant to the item tonight, and you're happy to move a deferral motion? tonight. So that's a procedural motion, and we need to, sorry, Alderman, Councillor Basalt, we've got a procedural motion before us which we need to put. That's a deferral motion from the Deputy Lord Mayor. Sorry, there's no debate now. Eh?
No need for a seconder.
No need for a second.
No need a seconder. So I'll put the deferral motion. All those in favour of deferral say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour. All those against?
Councillor Silt, Councillor Kelly, and Councillor Harvey.
So that's carried. So the item's been deferred until when? The next meeting in a fortnight. And it's been deferred to find further information with regard to
Homes Tasmania,
Homes Tasmania and the...
willingness to make a space available.
Okay, all right, we're clear on that? Yeah. All right then. Thank you. We'll move on to the next item. And thank you for presenting tonight. Thank you. Next item is 90 Melville Street. I'll open the item. Deputy?
So moved, Chair.
Item moved. Any debate? Councillor Bloberger, could you resume your seat, please?
Forum without me, didn't we, Ben?
Just, yeah. Okay. So the item's been moved by the Deputy Lord Mayor. Is there any debate or discussion around the item? This is for 90 Melville Street, Hobart, and adjacent road reserve, demolition, new building for business and professional services and vehicle parking and associated works. Councillor Wassell.
Thank you, Chair. Director, two elements that interested me. One was, I'm a fairly novice in this space, but I noticed that many of the recommendations made by UDAP were largely ignored by the developer. By way of clarity, there's no way that we can enforce UDAP recommendations on any of the proponents.
Through you, Chair, there are a couple of the UDAP suggestions which have been incorporated into the conditions. So to the extent that the UDAP concerns relate to planning grounds, for example, there's a condition relating to landscaping. So there's a fine line between things we can take into account and things we can't. I guess it's a little bit difficult to explain fully, but yes, sometimes we can, and we have, to the extent that we can, we have included those as proposed conditions.
And the second question goes to the parking, which I believe is being flagged because it's an excess of spaces. I'm sure I read in there that there's one spot per 200 square metres or something, and this is providing more parking than is...
Yes, that's correct.
Excellent, thank you. I guess my concerns and questions go to the Central Hobart Precincts Plan and the desire expressed in that for Melville Street to be a green belt, already addressing that there is 2 multi-storey car parks on Melville Street, and the potential interactions of having more vehicles on Melville Street, because this is giving us, having the extra parking is okay in the city, but we've now condensed it into one strip, which we've got a desire to not have as many cars on. So was that considered as part of the application and our response? And do you have any advice or commentary that you'd like to provide?
Through you, Chair, we basically can't take into account strategic planning objectives when it comes to a specific application being assessed against specific provisions of the scheme. So our development engineers have done an assessment of the parking that's been proposed against what the scheme calls for, and so we really limited to that as a framework for the decision. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. The framework, though, has said that this is discretionary because they're providing an excess of parking. So do we have traffic studies, traffic engineering reports on the impact of the extra vehicle movements on surrounding streets to get to that place to inform our decision?
Through you, Chair, there is a traffic impact assessment that deals with traffic movements, but these sorts of reports do tend to relate to the site and the immediate surrounds, which is appropriate. It's not appropriate to do necessarily a whole of suburb or the whole of the CBD type traffic analysis.
No, of course. Just the final question, which you may need to defer, but was that traffic management plan specific to having excess spaces compared to having the amount per the planning scheme? Did they do that comparison?
Looking, I can have a look though.
Yeah, if you could, that would be great. And questions and debate continue until you get it.
Anyone else? Lord Mayor?
Yeah, two questions. Just going to your comment about we can't factor in strategic planning documents into individual DAs. Why not? And when will we be able to use the strategic planning documents to guide DAs?
Through you, Chair, the application must be considered against the provisions of the planning scheme which is applicable at the time. The strategic planning bodies of work that are ongoing across the council municipality will be then implemented by creating a new planning scheme or a change to the planning scheme, such as a specific area plan. And once that change has occurred, then that will be the applicable planning scheme. There is a slight grey area, or there is some law which says where's a new planning scheme about to come into effect, then that can be taken into account. But that's not available to us on the legislative framework that we have.
So that could be a year or 2 or 3 away, would it be, before we have that Central Hobart precinct plan?
I'm not the best person to answer that question, but it will certainly be 1 year plus, I'd say.
Just another question around, sorry, I haven't read all the material on this project. Is there any development contribution to the streetscape in terms of a couple of street trees or anything that, we can ask for?
Through you, Chair, there is a condition requiring the provision of public art, but I'm sorry, defer to Mr. Eichen. I don't think there are any other conditions along those lines.
Is it possible for us to condition in, on the street frontage, a contribution towards our city canopy goals?
Sorry, I'm slightly underprepared, as you can probably tell on this item. The significant public benefits provisions applicable.
Thank you, Ms Aby. So the proposal actually complies with the amenity building envelope. So the provision of public art is something that the applicant is doing off their own back. The condition is on the permit to make sure that they do what they say they're going to do, but there's no ability for us, there's no planning head of power for us to demand that they provide any other kind of contribution back to the city.
Yeah, no, I wasn't thinking about demands, I was just thinking, did we have any conversations with the developer to try and negotiate a good outcome for the city?
Through you, Chair, yes, we certainly had lengthy negotiations through the General Manager consent process to liaise with them to try and come up with a good streetscape outcome.
But no trees, new tree or anything?
No new trees. There's landscaping proposed on their side and in the laneway that runs down the back, and there's a landscaping condition that would require landscaping on the 4th floor roof of the podium element, but no street trees, no.
Deputy, and then Councillor Dutta.
Thanks, through you, Chair. Just a question, 6.9.6 looks at the bicycle parking. So can you just describe to me, it's a low-level bicycle parking, and yet this is an office building? I mean, are we looking at encouraging bike use? So could you just explain that to me, please?
Well, rather than read out what the report has written, I mean, I think to add, they've not met the permitted number of bike parking spaces, but only just. We've added a condition requiring them to provide additional bike parking spaces for visitors, and we've also added advice into that condition to require them, well, not require them, but to encourage them to provide even more. And that's consistent with the approvals that we've given in the past. And I think if you compare this proposal to the previous proposal, you'll see that the bike facilities that they've proposed are an improvement on what they had before. Yeah.
I think that's a good thing, if I may, Chair. You know, like if we're, even though there's increased car facilities, to be able to encourage that riding into the city when we have great bike paths everywhere, I think that's the way of the future. Thank you.
I'm sure they have plans to convert all those car parking to bicycle parking at some point anyway. No? Any other debate? Councillor Dale.
Just a clarification, a question through you, Chair. In the report, there is a mention of rock anchor to be inserted in, I think, address is 82 Melville Street. Now, what is the issue there? An approval hasn't been given.
Through you, Chair. So what happens when there's deep excavation very close to the boundaries is that for the structure that's built on that boundary, a new-ish construction technique is to have a rock anchor. So there's basically something drilled through to rock on the other side to give it support. So you're being asked to give planning approval for that. There will be a separate step for the person who owns that land to give their consent to it. So nothing you do tonight will compromise the ability of the landowner to say no.
And that's from the previous development applications as well, as I recall. Yeah. Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Chair. I am happy to proceed and move the officer recommendation for this.
It's been moved by the Deputy already.
Oh, well, look at that. Well, I'm happy to provide some commentary then. This site has clearly been on the developer's radar for some time. We've had, I think this is planning iteration number 3 for the site. And I guess while for an office building, you know, the design and stuff looks okay, you know, would love to see developers really take on board all of the UDAP recommendations. I think they're the experts in what we want to achieve as a city, and having developers that work with UDAP really closely, I think, is a really good thing for both the developer and for the outcome of the city in the broader context. I can't let this through without passing commentary on the removal of residential components. In a housing crisis, it's such a shame to have an opportunity like this where we have a new large-scale building and we could have included some residences. Residences activate buildings like this on after hours, in the evening, during the weekend, and it would have gone some way to alleviate the housing crisis. So it's really disappointing to see that change. I know that's not relevant to the decision in front of me, but it is a big disappointment. And I think there was some commentary around the street frontage and the treatment of the ground floor, which would have provided more activation had the advice been adhered to from UDAP. And again, stressing the importance of activating our street frontages, not resulting in what we have at the UTAS accommodation on Elizabeth Street of a long stretch of glass that just, there's no one there. So happy to support the officer's recommendation and approve this development application, but I hope the developers take the feedback on board.
Any last comments before I put the recommendation for approval that was moved by the Deputy? No, there being none, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. Declare that carried unanimously. All right. We'll move on to item 7, which is reports. 7.1 is advertising applications report. Are there any questions or anything to highlight?
I'll just point out there's 6 more conversions to visitor accommodation in total in the two reports.
Okay. Any highlights?
85 Vaseline.
Yeah, two highlights. The Deputy Lord Mayor has referenced one already. Item number 8 there, 85 Athelene Avenue, which is right at the cul-de-sac end of Athelene Avenue in the newish subdivision. It's a proposal for 10 multiple dwellings. It's designed by Jaws Architects. It's coming to you next round of November with 7 objections. And the second one is item 17, which is 83 View Street. That's a officer recommendation for refusal, which is the trigger for coming to committee. It will also be coming next round. It's a proposal in part to include a car parking space in front of a heritage listed building with demolition of heritage fabric that we can't support. So that's the second one that will be coming to you next round on the 8th of November.
All right. No questions? Okay, we've got 2 questions. One from Councillor Passelt and Lohberger.
I don't know how to pronounce it either. Item 19, One Fisher Lane. Just noting that that's I think it's a multiple dwelling. It's not a single dwelling, is it?
Through you, Chair. So item 19, One Fisher Lane is the Farn School. So it's a redevelopment of the boarding house. So lots of money, 2.4 mil. But it's an extension and an alteration to the boarding house. Yep, that has already been approved.
It's through you, Chair. I just was quite interested in item 5, 1/60 Patrick Street, just for alterations extension. It seems like a pretty big job just looking at the price, the cost involved.
Yeah, through you, Chair. That's the Tasmanian Aboriginal Healthcare Centre. And it's an extension to that building in behind the building at the front. So yeah, it on plan it appears to be a fairly modest extension as well, but obviously construction cost is significant.
Okay, could I have a motion to receive? Thank you, Councillor Dutta. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Item 7.2, delegated decisions, planning report. Could I have a motion for that one too, please? Thanks, Councillor Passelt. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Declare that carried unanimously. Item 8, responses to questions without notice. Could I have someone move those? Thank you, Councillor Lohberger. All those in favour say aye. Those against say no. Declare those carried. Hang on, scroll.
I did just want to thank the staff for their responses to those questions. I had a couple in there.
That's why it's taking me so long to scroll.
Questions without notice.
That was Brian's
Up to
question.
okay. All right, we're up to questions without notice. Any questions? Item 9, one from Councillor Lohberger, one from the Lord Mayor. Any other takers? Okay, Councillor Lohberger.
Look, just through you, Chair, I just wanted to know whether there's a standard time period for notifying respondents that their item is on the meeting agenda, because I did get some complaints about short notice for this particular, one of the items tonight. Is that a standard thing, just the 2 days, or is it sort
Through you, Chair, there's no requirement for us to do so. We do that usually on the day that the agenda goes out as a matter of customer service. But there's no statutory requirement for us to do so. We had an individual on leave. The agenda didn't go out until late on Friday, and an individual was on leave and wasn't able to deal with it that afternoon. So that's the reason that we didn't get the notice out until the Monday.
Just for your information, they all said had it come on Friday, it would have been a lot handier for them to juggle their affairs.
Okay. Lord Mayor.
Yes. What would be the approximate cost of sourcing proactive policy / legal advice on how to amend PD6 to improve the clarity of definitions and workability of the directive for council planners?
Thought you might. Okay. All right. Any further questions? We're good? Okay. We've already completed... Did I see a hand there? No. We've already completed the closed. So no further items on the agenda, so I'll declare the meeting closed at 6:50.